the podcast. I am Nupur, and joining me today is James Quirk, a lawyer with 3 plus decades of experience. The topic for discussion today is the interplay between artificial intelligence and the data privacy law. Welcome, James. Great to have you today on the podcast.
Thanks, Nupur.
As AI continues to revolutionize multiple industries, it raises important questions regarding the privacy of our data, which is a growing concern in this era of increased reliance on AI. Data privacy law aims to regulate the collection, processing, and storage of personal data. One such notable legislation is the GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation, implemented by the European Union. Many other countries have other variants of data privacy law, and countries have recognized the need for legislation to safeguard individual personal information with the increased uses of AI. However, they also present challenges for organizations, especially when it comes to AI technologies. AI systems often rely on large data sets for training, and striking the right balance between innovation and privacy can be complex. With this background, coming to our discussion points, as AI continues to advance at an unprecedented rate, what do you think are the key challenges that arise in terms of data privacy and protection, mainly in terms of the impact of AI on personal data collection and processing, ethical consideration, potential risk and vulnerabilities associated with AI driven systems?
Great question, Nupur, and thank you for having me on your podcast. And as you know, the relationship between AI and privacy continues to evolve. In fact, not too long ago, on October 30th, here in the United States, President Biden issued an executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence. Central among the main points of that was a pledge to better protect American privacy. You'll notice he just said American privacy. I would have liked to seen, in the spirit of GDPR and global data protection, protecting everyone's privacy, but that's another matter. But in protecting America's privacy, he especially calls out the risks posed by artificial intelligence, and he's called on our Congress here in the US to pass a bipartisan data privacy legislation to protect all Americans, especially children. You know, in fact, that here in America, we don't have a countrywide privacy law. Unlike all of Europe and unlike many countries that do have privacy laws, we don't have one yet. We have a patchwork of state enacted data privacy protections. So with that in mind, and all hopefully the prospect of eventual bipartisan data privacy legislation at the national level in the US, some of the things that I would call out in response to your question, and let me just think about the top 5 things. My first concern would obviously be around mass data collection, because AI requires tremendous amounts of data for its training. Large language models functions best when you have large amounts of data, but building those huge data sets causes privacy problems, because where are they going to get the data from? Most often it's coming from scraping the internet. The second issue is opacity. We're really not sure, and this is even speaking from a scientific point of view, how the algorithms in AI function. It's often opaque. It's often taking place in the dark. And if the software engineers who develop those algorithms don't know what's going on, then how are we, as the users or the subjects of artificial intelligence, able to tell? The use of profiling and prediction in artificial intelligence, and I worked on this issue working on the thesis for my LLM in digital law and technology. Fascinated by how crime prediction and profiling works, I investigated that and found a tremendous amount of bias in using artificial intelligence to enable profiling and prediction. Two final things. Data brokers and platforms. There are data aggregators out there that are building commercial data sets, and people are taking those and using them with other data sets they have. And what you have perhaps can be a toxic combination that reveals private data. And the last thing is allowing the AIs and those algorithms to make decisions without human supervision. I think those are probably the top 5 things that I would be concerned with regarding privacy.
Thanks, James. Indeed, there are a number of challenges that arise with regards to data privacy and protection, and you covered the pertinent ones. You mentioned about mass data collection, and some of these data are highly sensitive and require additional protections. to ensure that it is held securely and not used in any way that may compromise an individual's privacy and security. Also, you raised the point regarding the opacity of the data. I think many such discussions are ongoing in terms of explainable AI. There is a lot of gray area around that, in hence maybe effective data privacy laws are in place to regulate and protect the data. That can be a safeguard, but still there are a lot of gray areas around that, and much more need to be done in this direction.
Indeed, I would agree with that. Yes.
Coming to the second question, how do data privacy law currently regulate the collection, storage, and use of personal data in the context of AI systems?
Again, great question and a great follow-on from my concerns on mass data collection, right? Because it's not just the collection, but the storage and then the use and then the disposal of that data, right? It's all of those things. And where did I learn that? Well, thankfully, in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation provides us with a strict set of rules for consent, data minimization, the individual rights regarding the use of that data, and the fact that it's being used by automated decision systems, including AI. GDPR provides a great foundation for covering those issues. Now, here in California, among the states in the US, I think we have the best set of data privacy regulations in the California Consumer Protection Act. And that gives residents here in California rights over the sale and sharing of their personal information. It also requires disclosure of the AI systems that are in use and may impact that privacy data. So if you look at those collections of laws, what we can see is a focus on transparency requirements. Companies have to disclose where the data is being collected from, how it's being used to train and optimize the AI systems, what are the potential impacts and risks, and then they have to follow all of the good data hygiene practices that are dictated by GDPR in Europe or CCPA here in California. The data collected, it has to be securely stored by the organization, and that has to be tracked. The individuals that have their data as part of this collection, they have a right to access, to correct, maybe even delete the data that's being held in the AI systems. So they have to be informed and they have to be able to exercise their rights. And that is true both in Europe and here in California. And obviously, I would like to see that true throughout the United States and in some of the other countries as well. For example, Canada, India, the UK, all of them have data protection regimes and laws on the books to create that layer of privacy and security for users. And then finally, the last thing I would mention is data minimization, right? That you should only be collecting the minimum amount of data, and then it should be either deleted or anonymized, again, to protect the privacy once it's fulfilled whatever the original task was in getting its authorized use in the AI systems.
Indeed. And even I feel that EU AI law or the European Union artificial intelligence law tries to bring a lot of transparency and accountability for different parties in these terms. And also, I feel that most of this law are trying to focus on accountability, lawfulness, fairness, and transparency, purpose limitation, security, and data minimization, which you already mentioned. But still, there needs to be a lot of harmonization, which yet need to be worked out.
You're right. The fact that there is an Artificial Intelligence Act in force in Europe, it provides a way to look at the use of artificial intelligence and to measure it in terms of the inherent risk of how that data is going to be used. And the risk is obviously to you and your privacy. So the AI Act does a very good job of that. And I think we have a lot to learn from that, both from the GDPR and the AI Act here in America as well. And I hope that's what the president had in mind with his executive order on the safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, but we still have to see how these things get practical implementation, because still companies will have to see how to implement or be or abide by EUAI law or other laws in this direction, which is again sometimes a very difficult task, because sometimes companies also doesn't have such data, so they also have to be more aware of this law and see that they are able to abide by it.
Very true.
Coming to the next question, with the increasing reliance on AI algorithm to make decisions that affect individual lives, how can we ensure transparency and accountability while safeguarding data privacy? I know you touched upon the point of transparency and accountability, and we even touched on the point of explainable AI, but still there are a lot of gray areas around this direction, especially which models are white box, which models are black box, and how to work around those. What comments would you have for this question?
Wow, there's a lot of things you can do, beginning with establishing human oversight committees that would monitor AI, validate the decisions that the artificial intelligence algorithms are making, addressing issues like bias, being available for appeals or questions on consent or questions on, whether or not you're using my private data and so on. I think that would be like right at the top of the list. But there's a lot of other things that you can do, and that would be including legislate, passing laws that enshrined privacy rights when the data is being used by artificial intelligence systems. At the level of the AI algorithms themselves and the scientific approach, using differential privacy techniques to enable testing of the AI models, testing for bias, testing for errors, testing that it does not reveal individual data or violate privacy laws. Privacy professionals talk about the idea of privacy by design, and being able to work with the architects of AI algorithms to ensure that is how we would implement privacy by design. Doing model impact assessments that would detail the potential risks, the biases, the effects, maybe ensuring that certain vulnerable groups are scrutinized to make sure that their private data is not being revealed. For example, if you look at the handling of special categories of personal data under Article 9 of the GDPR, that needs to be applied diligently to the use of AI and privacy-related data. Then allowing individuals to request from the AI algorithm vendors or the artificial intelligence companies, are you using my data? Where did you get it? How is it being used? And how am I being impacted by some of the decisions being made? This is essentially, looking at how artificial intelligence algorithms are determining your worthiness for credit, your worthiness for a job and employment, for example. All of these things, you're going to want some transparency. And then I think finally, the last thing I would urge would be independent audits. In other words, don't just trust the vendor of the artificial intelligence system, or rely on them to obey the government laws or the regulations. There should be an independent group that would test that. The same, I think, applies, within each country in Europe. There is an independent organization within the government that monitors compliance with the GDPR, and they do that independently, and they do that in order to ensure that there is compliance with the law. It's a
Yeah,
lot to do, I know. It sounds
yeah.
like a long list, doesn't it?
Yeah, indeed. And you covered most of the point, but just thinking out broad on the points you mentioned, uh, in a current setup where companies operate globally, I'm just thinking that suppose if the AI algorithm is reviewed, or if the company has back office for IT setup in one country, and it is validated and tested in that country, and it is audited also in the country, what can be done for its global acceptability? Because somehow compliance needs to be reduced also for companies. They should not be required to do similar compliance in 10 countries. Of course, they need to comply with AI laws of different countries, but how to ensure a bit of harmonization in this direction in terms of the AI law, that if companies have done certain things in one country, those are certain things. By that I mean that if AI data is tested, validated in one country, and it is also audited and reviewed in one country, whether the parent company or the other group company that is using that AI need to again undergo that testing validation in that country also, from the one already existing will be accepted or not.
That's an excellent observation. And I think, we have to rely on our mechanisms of international justice and, international governance. And I think this would probably be a role that the United Nations would need to step forward and offer some assistance in the same way that, that they provide access, globally to an international criminal court or an international court of justice. There should be some international organization at that level that might provide the seal of approval on all of these accountability and transparency issues with regard to data privacy. I know it's a big ask, and it sort of adds to an already overwhelming burden that we ask of the United Nations, but I think it may be the correct forum for giving you that global transparency. Whereas, if you've passed through, say, a licensing or a certification scheme, and you've demonstrated the transparency and the oversight and the accuracy, you've done that within the context of Europe. That certification should mean something globally. Not every privacy regime is exactly the same, but I'm sure that there is enough in common that uh, whatever the certification done in one particular market, if it was done well, may be acceptable elsewhere. And, the guarantee of approval might come from an organization like the United Nations.
Yeah, and maybe United Nations or some global bodies like OECD can take some step in this direction, and then countries can mutually agree that yes, they can release some guidance or can agree to some mutual agreement procedures with different countries on the acceptability of this assessment.
Mm. Oh, I agree. I agree. And that's
Come,
a great suggestion for the OECD as well. Thank you.
yeah. Coming to the next question, what are some potential risks of data breaches and unauthorized access to personal data in the age of AI, and what measures can organization take to mitigate this risk? I know we have covered most of the point, but still organization can also take some precautions. Of course they will have to do some bit once the AI law comes out, which is very detailed. They will have to do all bit, but still what extra precaution they can take to mitigate these sort of risk?
Oh, excellent question. And it allows me to bring in a little bit of the work that I regularly do in cybersecurity. Because, again, when you're talking about the risk of data breach involving your personal data, sorry, I had a artificial intelligence in the background decide to talk to me. The areas that I would look at for data breaches, what could possibly happen, and you have things like identity theft. When you have detailed profiles of individuals powering artificial intelligence systems, a breach of those systems could expose individuals' private data, and that could be used for financial, reputational harm with the misuse of the identity information you gain through that breach. There's always the prevalent possibility of discrimination based on that information collected and used by the AI. People can use that information that you would gain through a data breach for stalking or harassment, doxing people, as it's known. There's geolocation data in there attached to many of the photographs that you take and you post on your Instagram account or Facebook, and they can learn your personal habits, the name of your pets, the name of your mother-in-law, all of that information, when put together through an artificial intelligence and then accidentally leaked in public, can lead to theft of identity and allow people to stalk and harass you. Um, Things like bias amplification, that's another issue. Bias in dating sets could be exposed in a breach and may propagate and amplify the unfair outcomes that are being used based on that data. So if there's a data breach, someone can take that data and manipulate it and then make that part of the training model of a new AI. And again, the biases of that original AI data could be amplified. So now you have to ask yourself, what can you do to prevent all those things? What can organizations do to prevent a data breach that may leave their customers or their users or their employees exposed to all of these things, like the stalking, the harassment, the identity theft, the bias application? And there's good processes in cybersecurity. Use strong authentication. Ensure that you have access controls in place. Make sure that data is encrypted at rest and in transit. Make sure that you are auditing your logs, because that's where breaches are going to show up first. Make sure that you're looking for anomalous activity. If it looks strange, it probably is. Have regular vulnerability assessments, define and practice an incident response plan. And as a tabletop exercise, do that at least once a quarter. And every year, you should actually go through an incident response plan as if you're having a real incident. And finally, probably most important, and the thing that you should do right this second, minimize the data collected and minimize the data retained. The less data you have, the less that can escape during a breach. So those are just some of the things that you could do to protect the privacy of your users' data that are being fed through these artificial intelligence algorithms.
Yeah, completely agree. And also, they can put purpose limitation, like data is used for the purpose it is collected, or what purpose particular data set can be used for. And even segregation of data is another thing that could help in bringing some sort of protection of data. But yes, there are long list of points that needs to be covered, which you have already covered most of them.
Many of these things companies are doing today, but they need to extend these best practices in cybersecurity to the data that is being used to train their artificial intelligences. And then it also needs to protect the data that the artificial intelligence is producing.
Exactly. Yeah, completely agree. We have also discussed on the role of government, where we were discussing about different acts.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah. What do you think extra, like, if, is there any extra point in your mind that governments can do in setting and enforcing data privacy regulation for AI technology? Because still, with EU AI law, also there are a lot of points where the question arises that how these interplay with data privacy law. So, what would be your thought in this direction? I think yes, the artificial intelligence laws are at very early stages, and still needs to be tested. But still, how to keep involved all the stakeholder, how to ensure that different acts play their role, and there is not much gray area or they interplay well. Well, what do you think in this regard?
Oh, I think that government absolutely needs to play an active role in the regulation of AI in order to ensure their citizens enjoy their privacy rights. This would start right here in the United States. We should pass a comprehensive federal legislation so that the data privacy laws establish rights, oversight mechanisms, enforcement powers, the same thing as that you have in Europe with the GDPR and that many countries have already established. We need to do that here. And any country that doesn't have AI ethics laws or an AI act or data privacy laws should get those in place. Next, requiring transparency from the AI systems. That to me sounds like a government job to establish that the algorithms are audited, the explanations are given, that there is adherence to the privacy and the ethical standards we expect and that we put into law. We need to obviously balance the company's trade secrets and their, secret sauce or whatever they want to call it in producing these large language models and the data they use and the algorithms that take that data and turn it into thoughtful, intelligent, or appearingly intelligent responses. That we need to protect their intellectual property rights, but we still need enough transparency to ensure that privacy rights are being protected. I think in Europe, for example, the European Data Protection Board, some of the national organizations like the CNIL in France, even nonprofits in Europe have a role to play, like Max Schrems' NYOB, NYOB, if you want to pronounce it that way. All of these organizations, from the private sector, the public sector, the not for profit, the government level, all have to interact with each other in order to ensure users are ultimately given their privacy. So it's a combination, not just of government, but of citizens and not for profit organizations as well. And then, we've already spoken about perhaps the OECD or the United Nations being able to step up and provide us with a global forum in which we can look at artificial intelligence and ensure that it is adhering to privacy regulations no matter where in the world you are.
Yeah, I completely agree that there's need for more cooperation, harmonization, and government from different countries needs to work together to bring some sort of harmonization also in this direction. And that brings me to the next question. We already discussed that different countries have different data privacy law. What do you think? What challenges does this pose for global organization working with AI? And we already touched this point.
Did talk about
Yeah.
harmonization, and where did we look here in California when we wanted to protect the privacy of our citizens? We looked to the GDPR. Many other countries have done the same thing, Nupur. So I think that the opportunity for harmonization is there because of a common source of many countries looking to establish governmental privacy for their citizens. There's always been that, let's see how they did it in Europe. Let's see what they put in place because, that satisfied many governments, tens of millions of citizens, and it was accepted and is now enforced across an entire continent. Maybe we have something to learn. And so that's where I think a lot of the world is looking to the model of the GDPR in Europe. And I think as we continue to work on artificial intelligence, we will continue to look to Europe because Europe has been at the forefront of the regulation of artificial intelligence as well. So I think if there is hope for harmonization, it comes from looking to the good models being developed in Europe today.
Yeah, because that is a need, because it's really difficult for organization to ensure compliance with multiple set of laws and regulation, and that somehow would impact innovation, especially for small companies or startup. There needs to be some form of relaxation so that they can also work in this field and can aim for bringing in innovation.
Absolutely. And supporting, startups and small businesses is, written right into the AI Act itself and the
Yeah,
ability to provide them with a sandbox
yeah.
in which they can experiment with artificial intelligence. And I think here in the United States, again, we are trying to do the right thing. So in the president's executive order, that there's a call for artificial intelligence and for an investment to be made in it, for positions to be opened up in the government for people with expertise in artificial intelligence, and support for small businesses as well, in order to bring that innovation and the benefit of artificial intelligence to as many people as we can, all the while making sure we respect everybody's privacy rights.
Yeah, agree. And we did cover, you already mentioned what is ongoing and what can be done. What changes or update do you foresee in coming future or in near future to ensure better protection of personal data, especially in terms of balance between privacy and innovation, policy collaboration, which we already discussed, and collaboration mainly between different stakeholder, policymaker, academia, industry expert, ethical framework and standards? Would you like to add some points more here?
We covered, I think, a lot of good ideas like coordinating globally privacy frameworks. And again, looking to the GDPR as our model and source. Strengthening individual privacy rights, especially against automated decision making, especially when those automated decisions impact your finances and employment. Robust regulation, especially governing the use of biometric details, sensitive health or sensitive financial data stored and used by AI applications, making sure that we not only adhere to our existing rules around collecting and retaining personal data, but also the sharing of that personal data, the merger of that data from different sources. We need stricter rules around all those things. We need explicit oversight over the AI algorithms in a way that, yes, allows for innovation, yes, allows companies to maintain their trade secrets, but at the same time ensures the protection of individual privacy rights. So I think the last thing I would add to that is making sure that, and this is the sort of needle to thread, ensuring that AI regulation promotes both innovation and strong individual privacy rights. Technology continues to advance rapidly, as you know. A year ago, we probably wouldn't have even had this conversation about AI because it's just been a year since ChatGPT became publicly available and became astonishingly successful. I think that was November of 2022, and here it is, November 2023, and all anyone can talk about is artificial intelligence. So let's make sure that we can allow companies to continue to innovate with AI, but that doesn't come at the expense of anyone's privacy.
Yeah, true. And I think these steps needs to be taken to be better positioned to capitalize on the best AI application or the best uses of AI, while also safeguarding individual rights and freedoms. Any more points you would like
No,
to add, James?
I, I think if we could do all of these things, we'll be in an excellent position. But it's going to be hard. There's a lot of work to be done, Nupur, as you're aware.
Yeah.
There's much to be done.
Yeah, exactly. And especially worry is more on bringing on more harmonization, especially at global level, or setting up some regulatory body at international level for these things.
Yeah.
Is a time-taking process.
And I think it makes me happy that I know there's a lot of good people working on these issues. You and I, some of our colleagues as well. So there's a lot of energy, a lot of brain power, a lot of smart people working on hard problems, and that always produces good solutions.
We can only hope for the best.
Oh, yes, yes, exactly.
Thanks a lot, James, for sharing your thoughts. That was indeed an insightful discussion.
Thank you,
For
Nupur. I
tuning in
appreciate
all.
the invitation.
Thanks all for tuning in.
Thank you, everybody.